In today's video, we're going to be talking about all the things that are different in Mexico from the US that we absolutely love. Make sure to stick around till the end because the very last one, number 6, might shock and surprise you. Welcome to Entrepreneur Expat. I'm Justin.
And I'm Amanda. And on this channel, we cover all topics about how to live and do business overseas as an American. So if that's something that interests you, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a single video that we have coming out on this channel. And make sure you give it a like too, because it helps us with the algorithm gods so we can get this out in front of as many people as possible. And if you happen to be interested in starting your entrepreneur expat journey in Mexico, which a lot of people do, then make sure to download our free Moving to Mexico guide below because it's going to help you get started with the basics of everything that you need to know to move to Mexico.
So jumping right into it, the number one, or the first reason that we like Mexico more than the US is they're very community oriented here. So they're all about community, they're all about family, they're all about making connections and being closer to each other than you see a lot, especially in the US. I would say that in the United States today, the culture is very individualistic. The culture is very about what you can do, what you can achieve, what you can accomplish on your own. And to be honest, I think that's one of the main reasons that we see so much homelessness, that we see so much depression, that we see so much mental illness, because people are so disconnected from each other and from their families. And in Mexico, we just don't feel disconnected at all like we did back in the States.
Gotta pick yourself up by your bootstraps in the United States, that rugged individualism that sometimes it has a good side. Let's be honest. There's a good side. There's a lot of innovation that comes out of the United States. There's no denying that, although some people are saying not as much as it used to.
True.
If we're being honest. But there's also this massive downside, and the downside is that people live very isolated in the United States. And in Latin culture, it's not so much like that, right? So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's the fact that Latins in general, I say this as a Latina, we tend to be very close to our families. We tend to be more traditional when it comes to the family units. In that sense, it's like family no matter what. It's like God, then family. But also from what Mexicans have told us being here, Mexicans by general rule have not had necessarily the best relationship with their government and the systems around them. Either the systems are non-existent or they're maybe not as efficient. So a lot of Mexicans have learned to take matters into their own hands or take matters into like a community. Like the community helps each other in Mexico, and that is something that is very different than what you typically experience in the United States.
And that kind of brings us into number 2, which is that people here are very social and friendly. It's a very warm and receptive culture, especially I would say to foreigners or people that are really coming here and trying to make their own and trying to fit in and adapt. Despite what you see maybe in the comments on Instagram or TikTok, Mexicans are actually very warm and friendly people, and the culture is just a lot warmer.
Yeah, so there's a lot of news stories about there being tension between expats and Mexicans, and that's true in some parts of Mexico, and then of course everybody just sounds off in the freaking comments on Instagram and TikTok. But we're here to tell you that Instagram and TikTok are not real life. They're not real. It's just people who are very reactionary.
And the same thing happens in the
yeah,
US.
no, the same thing happens
You find
everywhere.
the worst of the worst.
The worst of the worst.
The comment section. We love you guys because you get us a ton of attention on these platforms. But for being honest, right? The people that are commenting and saying, you know,
Gringo,
you guys
go
suck,
home,
go
you guys
home,
suck,
whatever,
like...
are typically the ones that have absolutely nothing better to do. And if we're being honest, like, they're not very satisfied with their own lives. And so they're taking it out on us because they need a scapegoat. They need a reason to be mad. And of course, they're not even going to see this because they never go on YouTube and watch the full videos. They typically will go and watch the 30-second clips that we post on TikTok and get mad and not even have the full context because they're not willing to actually invest time into getting to know somebody. But the majority of people that we've met here, and we've got boots on the ground, we've been living in Latin America in my case for over half a decade. In Amanda's case, she's Latina, so she understands the culture already, but she's been here for a while as well. And it's a very, very warm culture. We have never felt like people did not want us around here or anything like that.
Yeah, it's actually the exact opposite. I mean, in Mexico, and again, real life, not TikTok or Instagram, where it's the cesspool of humanity, basically living in those places. But in person, Mexicans are probably some of the warmest, kindest, friendliest people. Let's give a couple of examples. I'll give an example. When we were trying to find a house in Guadalajara and a place to live, we were taking holistic healing classes, and we asked our classmates for help in helping us find a place to live. These people didn't know us. They had just met us like 2 weeks before. We're like foreigners. We just showed up here, and they immediately started helping us, connecting us with people. They got us showings of houses with their friends. That's how Mexicans really are. Don't fall for the bullshit online that you might see on social media, because again, not real life. Another example, I had this happen at the gym. I go to a gym class, it's like a dance class, these people just met me, and within 5 minutes, they're inviting me out to coffee. Or the neighbor wants me, the neighbor that we have in front, she invites me to her sister's baby shower, to start helping me integrate more into the neighborhood. So generally speaking, Mexicans are very warm, kind, friendly. They will help you right away. And I think the fact that it's easier to be social in Mexico than it is in the United States.
And it's partly because you have to drive everywhere in the U.S., so you're not really meeting your neighbors as much, other than if there's a problem or something goes wrong or they want to call the cops on you because you're having a rager in high school. Definitely not personal experiences at all. I'm just simply relating stories. But you're not really very close to your neighbors and the other people in your community. And here, it's the exact opposite. It's actually very common. In fact, our dog Daisy probably has more friends here in the neighborhood than I do. We walk, obviously several times a day around the neighborhood, and everybody knows her name, even people that I've never met before. They're all like, Daisy, Daisy, oh my God, it's so good to see you. So it's just a very warm, welcoming community.
Yeah, very opposite to the United States, where you smile at someone and they think there's something wrong with you. Which I was out with one of our Mexican friends last night, and she was in Boston last year, and that was her experience. She goes, Nobody talks to anybody in the United States. You can't even smile at anybody.
Nope.
In the United States. She goes, it's more cold than Mexican culture.
Yeah, when I was in LA, in the middle of living in Colombia, I'd gone back home to LA a few times, and I just had this bad habit of smiling at people in the elevator and saying hello, because that's just what you do in Latin America. And I did that in Hollywood, and I said, oh, hello. And then people were like, hell is that guy? What is...
Yeah. Yeah, social skills in the United States are just diminishing by the day. Yeah. All right, so next point is, and this is a favorite probably of everyone that comes to Mexico from the United States. It's one of the first things they notice, which is that the food tastes like real food.
And if you're coming from the U.S. and you haven't traveled a ton, you might notice that it tastes different than maybe anything you've ever tasted before. In fact, you'd be like, well, this is weird. Like, this is a weird tasting fruit. It's not as overly sweet as all of the GMO stuff that they have in the U.S. that you can buy at any time of the year. If it's out of season, if it's in season, doesn't matter. It has a natural, I would say, much more wholesome, much more pure taste. The fruit, the meat, everything. It's not pumped full of hormones. It doesn't have a bunch of added preservatives and sugar and words that have too many syllables for the average person to even be able to pronounce. I look at the ingredients list on some of the food, the processed food that you buy in the average grocery store in the U.S., and I can't even pronounce any of that shit. Because in many other countries outside of the U.S., a lot of the things that we use back in the States are illegal in most other places in the world in our food supply.
Yeah, the first thing, when I went back to the U.S. for the first time after spending an extended amount of time in Mexico, the first thing I noticed was that the food either tasted like nothing or it tasted kind of very oddly chemically, if that makes sense. And we're not the only ones who've experienced this. We've interviewed other expats living in other countries. Like, for example, we interviewed somebody living in France. Literally the first thing they noticed when they came back to the U.S. was the food tastes weird
Yep.
or it tastes like nothing.
So, number 4, in the reasons that we like Mexico and why everything is so different here, is that they keep a lot of the pre-Hispanic culture alive and well in Mexico. So, contrary to the U.S., where, if we're being real, they not only wiped out a lot of the indigenous population, they also destroyed a lot of their customs, their traditions, their art, wiped a significant amount of it just totally off of the face of the continent, which is super sad. In Mexico, sure, they were colonized by Spain, but you see a lot of pre-Hispanic art, architecture, statues, buildings. Yes, they took down most of the pyramids to build churches, that's a fact, but there's still a lot of things here that are remnants, that are relics, and even things that they practice today in their culture that came from those pre-Hispanic times.
Yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things about Mexico, and a lot of people who come here mention it as well, is that they did a really good job of somehow, I don't know how, well, I do know how, I actually learned it recently from another Cuban American expat married to a Mexican woman, and according to him, or his wife, I guess, because of Mexico's landscape, where it's very mountainous, and it's not actually that easy to navigate around Mexico's landscape, but that's conversation for another time. Because of that, then the Spaniards were not able to ever fully conquer the indigenous people in Mexico. I don't know if that's true or not, so please, Mexicans, if you know, please let us know in the comments. That's just what
sounds about right.
That's just what I learned recently, and
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting. But for example, temazcales, which are sweat lodges, we have one 10 minutes from us in the middle of the city. This is common stuff in Mexico. Or they do a lot of like natural medicine in Mexico, and many of the traditions and rituals and healing things that they would do in pre-Hispanic times is still alive and well in Mexico, and very easy to find.
Yep. There's even a pyramid park, actually. We've probably seen us record videos there a couple times, but there's a park we go to with a big pyramid. It's not a real.
It's not real.
Mayan. I don't know if this was the Mayan or
This is the Aztec region.
I guess this region is
yeah.
more
So the
Aztec,
middle
yeah.
of Mexico.
It's a fake pyramid. It's
Yeah.
built in postmodern
So
times, but still.
So the middle of Mexico, which is more where we are, was the Aztecs, and then more by Yucatan and Chiapas in the south is more where the Mayans were. So actually, what's one of the really cool things about Mexico is those are two civilizations that had major influence on human history and humanity as a whole, and you can find both of them here in Mexico, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
When you think about it. Okay, the other thing that we love about Mexico is that there is literally something for everyone. We've mentioned this in other videos, like the best places for expats to live. This concept came up, which is whatever you're looking for, you can find it in Mexico. A lot of Americans and Canadians, unfortunately, because of the media that they get over there, they think Mexico is a bunch of desert border towns or beaches. That's it. They don't realize that Mexico is a lot more than that. You can find, I think they said it was like 6 different types of climates and
Biomes.
landscapes that are in Mexico alone. So if you want desert, you can go find it. If you want beaches, you can go find it. If you want mountains, which is kind of our vibe right now, you can go find it. If you want like valleys and ranches and all that stuff, you can go find it. If you want the jungle, you can find that too.
And in case you're wondering, everything doesn't just change to this weird sepia filter that you see in the movies as soon as you cross the border in Tijuana, just FYI.
That does not happen. Quite the opposite. Mexico is extremely colorful, which I actually like about Mexico too. There's colors everywhere, which is it's vibrant, it's happy, it's it's nice. Let's talk about the last one, because this is the one that shocks the hell out of everyone.
So number 6, and we mentioned at the beginning that this is going to be a big one that might surprise you, is freedom. Now, they say in the US that America is the land of the free and home of the brave, and we have to fight for our freedom and all these other things. And sure, that's true to a certain extent. But when it comes to the real day-to-day life of living as an expat here in Mexico, we notice that the personal freedoms that you have down here are actually in many ways a lot greater than the personal freedoms that you feel in the West. Now, I'll give you an example. I go and I walk with Daisy every day. Most of the time, she just goes and she pretty much walks herself. I follow behind her. She doesn't have a leash on. She's very well trained. And nobody really minds. I'm not going to get a $250 ticket like I might somewhere in the US for having my dog off leash. If she's not going up to people and harassing them, which she doesn't do other than occasionally to get a nice pet on the forehead, she's not going and causing trouble. She doesn't. She's a very well-behaved dog. Nobody really cares very
Yeah,
much.
and the neighbors, it's the same. They're dogs. Like
Yeah.
Lucrecia, which is the Chihuahua that our neighbor has.
She just
same
walks
thing.
herself.
She just walks
She's the
herself. Also, another thing is if you want to go crack open a beer on a beach,
Nobody's going to stop you.
nobody's
You're
gonna
not going to
stop
get a
you.
ticket for having an open container.
On
The
a
only
beach.
place I'm aware of in the U.S., and obviously there's places where it's more tolerated, but the only place I'm aware of in the U.S. where you can actually have an open container anywhere is on the Strip in Las Vegas. And Las Vegas, I lived there for almost 2 years. It's not real. I mean, at least if you look at the Strip in that area, it's a very contrived kind of thing where it's all about going there and having fun and partying and gambling and whatever you do in Vegas. And it's funny that people need something like that because the US, topic for another video, but is typically very held back and very repressed. So they're like, I need a weekend every couple months to just go and let off steam. But you don't really need that here because you actually experience freedom on a day-to-day basis. Even with the police, like I don't feel now. Granted, it's a lot worse for other people and other groups of people in the U.S., especially minorities when you're back in the States and in terms of getting harassed by police and things like that. But even me as a white male, I don't feel that kind of like internal fear if I get pulled over by a cop or if they're on the street or anything like that as I would in the States. Because they're just more chill here, and for the most part, they're not out to harass you or to give you a hard time. Yeah, once I got pulled over for not having a seatbelt on, and I almost got a ticket. He let me off with a stern talking to. But you're not afraid that if you commit a minor traffic infraction, you're going to end up paying for it for the next 6 months.
or get shot.
Or get shot, exactly.
Now, there are instances where the police, we've had people bring this up in the comments. Yes, there are police officers here that are corrupt and looking for a little payday kind of a situation. It happens, right? Maybe it happens more in the touristy areas and things like that. But overall, we haven't had a bad experience. I mean, there was even a point where we had to ask, he wasn't even police. I think he was like state police, and we had to ask him a question for something. And there was
I needed to illegally park the car to go and pick up a bike, and apparently they were protecting a government building. He's like, yeah, okay, just park your car over there. You can't drive through here. I'm like, all right, cool, thanks.
okay, cool. And he let us illegally park the car. So
I didn't realize he was actually a cop. I just thought
we
he
didn't
was
know he was a
security.
cop.
But
right?
anyway, they're very nice here. And if you look at, again, looking at all of this through the lens of freedom, even if they do ask you for a bribe, now we're not condoning this by any stretch of the imagination, but even if they do end up getting a little bit of money from you, would you rather pay 50 or 60 US dollars to a police officer for a ticket or whatever you want to call it in cash? Or would you rather have to go through this lengthy process where you have to go to court and fight a traffic fee and then get something in the mail and then show up and then contest it and hire a lawyer? Because if not, you're going to get points on your license and potentially pay thousands of dollars to the state. I mean, yeah, there is corruption. There are things like that. But if you look at it from a really, really high level, would you rather pay $50 or $60 to get out of something versus potentially having to pay thousands in fines for something that doesn't even feel like it really should be a law?
Yeah, and actually there's another expat I was following here that the reason he ended up in Mexico was because he was illegally arrested in the United States. It turned into a whole ordeal that he couldn't even get rid of for months and months and months. And that's actually how he ended up in Mexico. It's like, I've never had a situation like that.
Because people aren't ridiculous here. It's not this over the top, you have to follow the letter of the law and this exact thing. And I think that the US, as much as it tries to just have this sense of security and lawfulness and everything else, they've gone so over the top where you're afraid that, God forbid, somebody might be walking down your driveway and there's a little crack and they fall and hurt themselves and now they can sue you and take your house. It's like, to me, that's ridiculous. And they don't have that kind of lawsuit happy culture here that they do in the US. It's just, you want to look out for your own personal property for yourself. You want to be personally responsible. I think that's the other end, and it's a very libertarian society in our perspective.
It has a lot of soft liberties. So like the government may not be necessarily libertarian, but the society is more libertarian in the way that it functions. And for some people, that's a great thing. Like us, they like it. For other people, it's not such a great thing. So know that about Mexico. We like it. Most people like it. Other ways in which there's more freedom here is like if you're the owner of your house, you can do whatever the fuck you want to your house. It's not like a huge ordeal with permits and things like that. Granted, the neighbors have told us you probably should go get permits in Mexico. Ain't nobody doing that.
No. We're not going to go into detail, but we've made some modifications. We've put some panels up.
On a rental.
On a rental.
And the
house.
owner's like, okay, cool, no problem.
Oh,
like,
great. Yeah,
no,
maybe you could install some panels on
Just go have fun.
in my house too.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Have fun. Like, no big deal. Have fun. Nothing. And also business. Now, we're not super clear on business regulations here, so.
If you want to start a taco truck in Guadalajara, you can get a taco truck and start and sell your tacos. Will you probably eventually want to get permits from the city and do all that? Yes, but you're not going to get shut down on day one by the health department because you're selling tacos. Like,
also,
there's a big informal economy, and there's pros and cons of that for sure, but people are able to start businesses with a lot less red tape.
They start businesses so fast here, and I've even asked questions. So, for example...
You would.
I'm a naturally curious person. If you ever meet me, I'm going to ask you everything that you don't want to talk about. But I'm going to ask anyway, and you're probably going to tell me. Or you're just going to volunteer the information without me asking, because that happens a lot too. Ask this one.
We try to get out of the house for 5 minutes and buy a juice, and we end up hearing the life stories of
like 3 people at least. Yeah.
Which is fine. It's entertaining.
It's entertaining.
She keeps me on my toes.
So I've been asking around at the different businesses, Juice Bar being an example, 2 20-something-year-old kids, and they wanted to start a juice bar and coffee shop. And I said, how long did it take you guys to get this thing going and off the ground? And they said, from the minute we had the idea to when we opened the doors and started serving people, 3 months. Mm-hmm. 3 months. I asked the salon, same thing. Hey, you guys took over this space that was here. How long did it take you guys to get up and running? Between you deciding to open a salon and actually serving clients. A month.
Yeah.
A month.
That would be unheard of in California.
Unheard of in California. Do they have to pay for permits and the fees for the signs and that kind of stuff? Yeah, but the rapidness at which people can start and open up business here.
I think you're combining English and Spanish.
Am I rapidness?
Rapidness. That's
rapidness. Is that not a word?
Rapidness?
Rapid?
Is rapidness a word?
Let us know in the comments.
I think you're thinking about rapido.
Rapido, yeah.
Yeah, but rapidness. Rapidly. You
Rapidly.
do things rapidly, but I've never heard rapidness. Maybe it's a word. I don't know.
The speed at which
we do that sometimes.
Yeah.
We mix the English and the Spanish.
The speed at which you can Mexicans can start businesses in Mexico, and not just Mexicans. We have a friend who is Canadian, married to a Mexican. Granted, she's Canadian. She has a Canadian-themed coffee shop in the neighborhood. And I said, hi, how long did it take you from concept to getting this going? She goes, we took over the lease of this place and started preparing everything in 3 months, no big deal. And I said, really? She goes, yeah, if I was still in Toronto, I'd still be waiting for permits 3 years later.
Yep.
So there's a level of freedom here that you don't have in the United States. Granted, it's a lot more personal freedom that you have here. And it's also a very live and let live kind of culture. You can go do whatever the fuck you want. Nobody's in your business like that. No one really cares. It's very live and let live. Whereas a lot of Americans feel like there's more and more, what's the word I'm looking, infringing on their personal
on their rights,
on
yeah,
their
on
personal
liberties.
freedoms.
The irony when we talk so much about how America is such a free place.
I know, it's very interesting. Although to be fair, a lot of Americans cannot handle how free Mexico actually is.
Yeah, the sidewalks are all different, and they like to use indoor tile outdoor sometimes. Very slippery in the rain. Ask me how I know that.
Yeah, so Americans sometimes are like, whoa, this is like too much libertarianism
But
and lack of regulation for me.
I will say though, compared to what a lot of Americans have in mind before they come to Mexico, where they just think it's this like the dirt roads and lawless society, and I mean, people have said this on our channel, especially on the Instagram comments, where like there's just bodies hanging from overpasses and all that.
There's like decapitated people in the streets. I'm like, what the hell are you all watching?
Bullshit. Like that's not true at all. But yes, you will notice the sidewalks might be a little bit less maintained here than they would be in your city in the US, depending on where you live. Like if you live in a nice area in LA, you probably see that the sidewalks, for the most part, I mean, we've had some challenges in Encino with how they don't fix stuff, but for the most part, you've got even sidewalks and the streets are pretty much the same. Here, you might be walking down the sidewalk and then all of a sudden the sidewalk ends, then it starts again a few houses later. There's little things like that where, yes, that's kind of the con to that type of society where it's more libertarian, where it is a little bit more free, because I think here the homeowners actually own that area with the sidewalk as well. So they're basically responsible for that. And they may or may not create or maintain that.
Right.
So,
or another example, just so people know, it rains in Guadalajara a lot during the summer months. And sometimes that means there's like down trees and flooding and all kinds of stuff. And we had our neighbor's tree actually fell. And it was like 2 days before the city was able.
No, it wasn't 2 days. It was less than 24 hours.
Before the
It
city
fell the
got
night
out there?
before. No, it was about 24 hours.
Oh, was it?
It was the night, one night, and then they came the following night at like 11.
Well, to give you an idea, it was like 48 hours-ish.
It was a day. It was a day.
Was
I remember.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, to give you an idea.
It wasn't that bad, but it would have been faster in the U.S.
It would have been faster in the U.S. It would have been done in the first 24 hours.
Yeah, there was a tree that fell, and then you remember what happened? The guy came out with his...
One of our neighbors came out with a machete and an axe.
Yeah, because they wanted to get through the road. The tree had fallen down. I wonder if we have a picture of it somewhere.
No, but I hear this like axing sound, and I look out the neighbor's window, and I'm like, oh my god, there's a dude out there with an axe and a machete.
With an axe and a machete.
Handling this tree himself.
I was gonna go out there too with my battery powered Makita cutter.
And then the city came out at 11 o'clock at night. So
with like 15 guys and 2 trucks. Well, they had probably been taking care of it because a lot of trees fell.
Yeah, a lot
in
of
the
trees
city,
fell
like dozens
in
of
that
trees.
storm.
It was a huge storm.
The point is, Mexicans have a society where it is a lot more personal freedom, and that can either be a pro or a con. For us, it's a pro. For a lot of people, it's a pro. For some other Americans, they might find that it is a con, depending on how much they don't like their own personal freedom.
Yep. Well, there you have it. Those are the top 6 reasons that we love all of the things that are different in Mexico, the 6 differences that we have found the most enjoyable. We hope you enjoyed this video, and make sure to like and subscribe as always, and definitely check out the Living in Mexico guide right below this video. Download it. We'll share some of our tips and tricks, and make sure to keep you updated whenever we release new content, and when we start doing events and everything else. You guys will be the first to know. We look forward to having you join us and continue joining us on this entrepreneur expat adventure.